Welcome in. Campo and Joe ready to go. Happy to be with you. And we should start out by saying we hope that you had a happy Thanksgiving. Now, Sunday of Thanksgiving weekend wasn't the best. That's what we're going to tear into. But there's nothing wrong with wishing everybody a Thanksgiving from Campo and Joe.
Absolutely. Happy belated Thanksgiving to all you out there.
As much as this team stinks, there's still a lot to be thankful for.
Well, of course. That's always the case.
Yeah,
I mean, you always have to look at your life and say, okay, I've got these bad things happening, but there's a lot of good going on at the same time.
And we get to watch a team from Duval every single Sunday, no matter how bad it is. All right, Joe C. from XL Primetime, our head coach, Dave Campo. And let's get into the game. Let's get into where this team currently finds themselves out of playoff contention. That became official last night with Denver winning the game. They have no shot to make the postseason, as if you didn't already know that. But out of that game against the Houston Texans, which we will talk about the loss, the biggest piece of news is what happened to Trevor Lawrence and now a 3-game suspension for zero, because he truly acted like a zero in Aziz Al-Sair. So let's start with that, Coach, because you had some strong feelings about what went down on the field with that hit.
Well, it's absolutely disappointing and ridiculous what Shair did in that situation. And, they can window code it any way they want it. Mm-hmm. But he had plenty of time to, even if he'd have just gone over the top of him and hit him or landed on him or anything, he had plenty of time to pull off. You don't throw a forearm into the guy's head. I heard all this stuff out there, people saying, well, back in the day, this was okay. Yeah. No, not throwing a forearm into a guy's head. That was never okay. Mm-hmm. Now, as far as hitting and not having rules about, launching and doing all these things,
right.
It wasn't about, specifically trying to put a guy and ruin his career. Yeah. So it was ridiculous, and I thought our guys handled it really well. And as a matter of fact, the tight ends, Evan Ingram and Strange, are my favorite people now because they handled it the right way, and they dragged number zero's rear end to their sideline, which is exactly what they should have done.
Yeah, I love that you and Leon zeroed in on that, because anytime you have a bad hit from an opposing team and you want to make sure that you are the judge, jury, and sentencer of this. In other words, you got to teach that cat a quick lesson, and that is bulldoze him into the sidelines, and then you hope nobody can really see what goes on.
Yeah, it's in the dark over there.
Yeah.
He's at the bottom of the pile. You never know what's going to happen.
And I do agree with you that both Brenton Strange and Evan Ingram was the first one to jump on zero. And we saw just a lot of ugliness that came out of that hit. Zero didn't want to leave the field. Brandon Sheriff, he said, you drop your helmet, I'll drop my helmet. I'm ready to go if you're ready to go. And there were a handful of other ones. I think as dirty as it was, he now is facing a 3-game suspension. Trevor did suffer a concussion, but at home trying to get back to where he's 100%. We don't know what that means for him, but at this point, Coach, you do not need to put him back in harm's way. At least I wouldn't think this football team would want to do that based on that hit, and now there's nothing really to play for.
Well, the biggest thing is going to be, he's going to miss 2 games no matter what, in my opinion, because, watching him right after it, you could see all the signs of a very serious concussion. And it's 2 within a year.
Yeah.
And, I was around a guy, Troy Aikman, who probably had another 5 years in him, but he had to back out of it because of the concussion situation. So as a coach, you want to win. Mm-hmm. As a player, you want to win. You want to show your teammates that you're ready to go and that you're going to be there for them. Mm-hmm. A decision on whether or not to shut him down with after another game is only going to be 4 games left, maybe 3 if it went 2 before he passes. That's an organizational decision. Mm-hmm. Shad Khan paid him a lot of money.
Yeah.
And, he's the guy that's going to have to come out and say, hey, look, now that can be in discussion with Doug Peterson and Balky and whoever's involved in the organizational part.
Right.
But the owner is the guy that's going to make the final decision. And if I'm him, I would seriously consider shutting him down.
if you think about the teams they're going up against, they can feel a little bit better in terms of beating other bad teams in the league. The Tennessee Titans maybe a little bit better on one side of the ball, although we probably could argue that. They only scored 19 points. They gave up over 40 to Washington this past week, so you probably could easily argue their defense is.
I don't think you can argue. Their defense is better than our defense.
Yeah.
There's no question.
That I would agree with, but they still gave up 42 to Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's nothing to gain now. So you have two games, one on the road, one at home against the Titans. You got the Jets, you got the Raiders, and then you got the Colts to finish out the season. And I dig it. You want to win a few ball games. And I'm not even necessarily into the whole tank idea. This team's bad enough. They're not tanking. They're bad.
Right.
And so they're going to have a very good draft pick. But at this point, don't you need to be a little strategic in making sure that you have the best possible draft pick, knowing what we know?
I would never say that. I don't think it ever comes down to that.
And the only reason I say strategic, meaning shut Trevor down.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now that and I think strategic means keep him. Sometimes you have to. Well, Leon says it all the time. Yeah. As a player, sometimes you have to, take it out of their hands because they all want to go back and be part of it.
And so I'd use the logic: you could kill two birds with one stone. You've heard the phrase.
Yep.
You take the decision power away from Trevor. You say, "Look, pal, we got to put you on IR. You're done."
Yep.
And then at the same time, you also enhance your chances to have a better draft pick.
Yeah. And you always come up with that draft pick, but at this point right now, as a coach, I'm not looking at the draft pick.
Yeah, you're trying to. If you're Doug Peterson, you're trying to save your job.
Absolutely, that's true.
And I'm sick of seeing this team pick at the top of the draft. They've done hardly anything with having top draft picks.
Right.
They have lived nearly 2 decades in the top 10 and have done hardly anything with it. So don't tell me you need more top 10 draft picks or top 5 draft picks and expect that it's going to turn this thing around. All right, so we talked about Trevor. Now let's talk about Zero, as I like to call him. Aziz basically is suspended 3 games. He's going to lose 3 game checks. Now Nick Caserio, the general manager for the Houston Texans, has come out and has blasted the NFL for their decision to sit him down. Now, let me just give you this real quick. And this is from the NFL with their ruling. And this is a letter straight to Al Sahir. Your lack of sportsmanship and respect for the game of football and all those who play, coach, and enjoy watching it is troubling and does not reflect the core values of the NFL. Your continued disregard for NFL playing rules puts the health and safety of both you and your opponents in jeopardy and will not be tolerated. So that's what they said. And they had multiple paragraphs in this statement, but it was a pretty strong one. Then Caserio comes out, general manager for the Texans, and basically calls it unfair, embarrassing, and BS. What do you think?
Well, that's probably one of the toughest things that the NFL has ever said.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with it 100%. There's a code in the NFL that you can go after somebody to have them feel pain, but you cannot cross the line to where you try to injure a player, to where it's a code.
Yeah.
You don't do that. And he crossed the line. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you what, I'm disgusted with Caserio, whatever his name is, and D'Amico Ryans. I lost a little respect for him for coming out. It's one thing to back your player, but he very well could have said, hey, look, there might be a little bit of interpretation as to whether or not he did it on purpose.
Right.
But, and that's taken care of. And, but, let's move on.
Yeah, he could have covered it up real easy.
Absolutely.
We got a lot to play for. We back all of our players.
Right.
But we're not a dirty football team.
Right.
Hope Trevor's okay. You could have, you 100% could have handled it a lot of different ways.
No
they
question.
chose not to.
Yeah.
And so, just as far I'm fine with that. Sit him down. Most people would have wanted to see him go for the entire year. I get it. NFLPA is going to come back, and they're going to have to defend him and basically say, we need to protect that guy just like we would protect Trevor. Right. And that's just the way the PA works.
Right.
Players Association going to defend the player.
Yeah, well, they're going to, and there'll be an appeal, and who knows with the appeal. I'd like to see it to where they do the appeal and they say, wait a minute, we were a little too lenient on that hit. Let's go to 4 games instead of 3.
Yeah.
That's the way I feel about it. I was a little disappointed in actually the way Doug handled it. I think he should have been a little bit more forceful. And I'll tell you what, after what those two said, if it was me, I'd have had a few things to say about Houston, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, I don't mind calling out another team and saying, "Hey, this you broke the code."
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And so, we will see where it goes. D'Amico wants to coach with toughness, and I get that. But we can go back, and you can come up with examples of, well, heck, you're very familiar with this, Buddy Ryan, way back in the day, that would teach
bounty hunting.
Yeah, not just toughness, but basically you can get rewarded for delivering. Kill shots.
Right.
And I'm just using the word kill shots.
Well, that's delivering pain.
Yeah. And you can go to Sean Payton and Greg Williams and all these other guys when they had that a bounty system set up where they were basically paying guys off for hits.
Yeah.
And look, we all know it's a collision sport. It's not a contact sport. Right. But at the same time, you got to make sure, and this is tough love, but it's the most obvious thing going right now in the National Football League. All you other guys, the quarterbacks are the superstars. Right. The quarterback is the product. And if you start taking those guys out and you feel like you're going to lose the game.
The thing that got me about D'Amico Ryans' comment was that we overreacted. Our team overreacted. Let me tell you something. If it was his quarterback, he'd have been the first one in the melee.
Yeah.
I mean, I know D'Amico Ryans. I watched him play. I know where he comes from as far as football player is concerned. So don't tell me there's a code amongst the players and they crossed the line. There's a code that would have been, as a matter of fact, when you look at that tape, I'm burned up that a couple guys weren't in it. And to be honest with you, I'm more excited about the guys that were in it, the Jurian Joneses. And by the way, he didn't throw a punch.
No, he just
he brushed the receiver. He brushed the official when he was trying to push a guy.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is ridiculous.
Brian Thomas was in there. There were a handful of other guys that you love seeing. I was trying to identify the guys that just had their hands down.
I don't want to say. I saw a few guys that kind of burnt me up that we could talk about off the show, but I'm not bringing it up.
All right, so that aside, and that will forever be the game or the topic of the game that we will bring up. But let's get to this team, Coach. And Trevor, I know, was already coming back from an AC sprain. And so for him to be able to try and play, we know he's tough. We know he wanted to be out there, but he also missed a couple of throws that he definitely needed to hit. So his rhythm wasn't there. Not saying it was gone, or that he couldn't get it back, but it wasn't very good. And then we still have the same old problems, man. We still have a team that can't block, a team that can't get the run game going, and a team that is just such a slow starter offensively.
Yeah, and again, when you really look at it, the tempo that our second quarterback used was when they score points.
Yeah.
They don't score in the script.
Yeah.
They score in the tempo game. And so, to me, I don't know why we don't do it more. Yeah, and I thought we were going to do it more.
I would love to suggest that would work, but they can't run the ball, and they can't block.
That's the problem.
And so the other team gets up. And I know you probably hate seeing this, but guys relax when they think they've got a game in the bag. And then you see this other team come back and claw or climb their way back into a ball game. And if you just look at the points, this was a low-scoring, decent job defensively.
Yes.
C.J. Stroud still found wide-open guys just running forever. Yeah. But still, they were able to button it up and at least apply enough pressure to him or make a stop on third down to keep it to field goals. It was a close ball game at the half.
The thing that surprised me a little bit is, they did change quite a bit during the bye. They went to a 5-man line. They had the 3 big people in there, like a 3-4, but not a 3-4 alignment, but they had 5 guys up there. They played more man-to-man coverage. The man-to-man coverage only hurt them the one time that number 3 fell down on that deep cross to Collins. But I was surprised at the end of the game when they had when Houston had to sew the game up, and you needed to get the ball back. They didn't go back to the 5-man line. Maybe they did that for a rush. I don't know, but they weren't in it at the end of the game. So.
I think one of the great identifiers of a football team is when you need to run it, you can run it. Right. And Joe Mixon was able to do that. He went over 100 yards. Nico Collins went over 100 yards, had 8 grabs. But in the end, they moved people, and they were able to get Joe Mixon in a position to basically seal the deal. Right. And that's what's so sorely missing from this football team. Right. And after the hit on Trevor, the team did play with a little fire for a little while.
Yeah.
And they did get some decent yards per carry, but it didn't last.
Well, they ran the ball about 7-8 times in a row.
Yeah.
Which is, why not keep doing it?
Yahtzee.
I don't understand. Listen, I always get mad sometimes with the offensive coaches that a play works. Then you never see it again in the rest of the ball game.
Right.
But watching Sean Payton last night, he ran the same play 2 or 3 times in a row.
Well, it was,
that's good. I mean, if it's working, use it.
It was incredible watching that game unfold as we just kind of drive off of the exit here real quick with the Monday Night Football game, the Browns and the Broncos. Highly entertaining. Jameis Winston, I'm telling you what, you get your money's worth with that guy. A couple of pick sixes. He's praying to God, please don't let me have any more of those. But
threw for close to 500 yards.
It was nuts. And so I want to say, if I have this right, Coach, Cleveland takes the lead. And so you would expect, this is early fourth quarter, you would expect Sean Payton, head coach, to go ahead and start to get the ball in the air. He ran it. Got him a field goal, took the lead. And then Cleveland comes right back and scores again, and he still ran it. That's a smart head coach.
Absolutely. And again, I think I don't know. When I watch our team in comparison to other teams, it looks like we're a high school. Oh, yeah. Well, we're going to run this. Well, let's try this. How about this one over here? I don't see that continuity, the tempo game, some of the stuff that you see other temes do. And maybe it's just, that we're old school. I don't know.
Well, you and I debate this, and I honestly, so you've forgotten more than I'll ever know. But I do believe this offense has either been figured out or is easily defensed. And I'm not sure which one happens more often, but there are plays to be made.
Yeah.
And there are guys that aren't necessarily the best. They're losing one-on-one battles, and that's why those plays aren't happening.
Right.
But at the same time, going back to your point there a minute ago, you just see a lot of other offenses look like they are 100% hooked up and well managed.
Yeah, and again, I hate to see it. I'm not in their meetings. I don't know what they go through, but Doug Peterson was considered an offensive star, and I just don't. I don't know whether our players can't handle certain things or what it is, but we just are not firing on all cylinders.
Okay,
that's for
so
sure.
You mentioned what they did coming out of the bye week on the defensive side.
Right.
Did you notice anything offensively? Because this is, again, a scripted set of plays that you want to come out with that you believe you can be successful with. And newsflash, most teams are. They do come out and have success here, whereas this team does not. So did you see any changes offensively?
Not really. I mean, the only thing I really saw was that they got number 7 a run.
Yeah.
Which was a good play. Obviously, they tried to get the ball to 7. Trevor underthrew they had a touchdown on the 1.
Yeah.
He underthrew it, to 7 going vertical. I mean, he had a 3-yard jump on the guy. And other than that, it looked like business as usual to me.
Yeah. It's crazy because this was a 6-3 ball game at the half. Defensively, they had done a decent job. They had kept, at the very least, C.J. Stroud under control, Nico under control, some of the other guys. And it was a gettable ball game, yet this offense still only was able to muster 3 points in the first half, only able to muster 6 points through 3 quarters, and then came alive late, as we said, when maybe the other team was ready to put it on ice. but it's still another loss by 3 points.
Yeah.
Both of these ball games against the Texans have been by 3 points.
Yeah, and really 7 out of the 10 losses are within one score.
Yeah, within 5 points or less. And here's the other thing, Coach. They're 8-5, and this team's 2-10.
Yep. Hey, it's
That
been
is
a
the
rough
NFL,
year.
isn't it?
It's been a rough year, no question about it.
It is the NFL. All right, so as we wrap this up, and we've got, like we said, a few more ball games this team's got to endure, go through, try and do something different. Looking ahead, how do they coach off of this or out of this based on the next opponent?
Well, I think, first of all, they get their first of all, they're going to test the pride of the football team because, that's what they're playing for from here on out. But I also think that you're going to see younger players. I think they started it already, really. They had Mason Smith in there. He had the most snaps.
You mean he was
of any
finally
of the defensive linemen?
He was finally active. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, and I don't know why he wasn't.
Yeah.
Other than he had an ankle injury,
Right.
and but at the end of the game, he wasn't performing the same way as he did at the beginning of the game. So that may be an issue with him. But I think you got to find those things out, and I think the younger players have to, get in there a little bit more. Very undisciplined in my mind on defense. In the secondary, you just see play after play where guys are almost like they're doing their own thing. I can't put my finger on it. It's just, they got to discipline. They got to get better discipline on defense.
Yeah, there needs to be more demands placed on these guys, and that may come back to the ice cream man I occasionally refer to Doug Peterson as, and it's soft serve, and he doesn't basically. I would consider him a good coach, but the attention to detail, the demands on the player, the accountability, and this is also player responsibility too. It's not just coaches, but it all comes together if you have that plan.
Well, I think that they've got to approach these games like, okay, guys, you're putting your resume out on the field.
Yes.
And Doug Peterson and Trent Baalke and everybody else are putting their resume out on the field.
All right, so let's finish up with that. Before the game comes out, press release, Trent Baalke, with all these great quotes about Walker Little, how they've grown this guy. He's one of our own, all this crap that Trent Baalke came out with. What did you think of the Walker Little actual signing value of that player before we get to Baalke?
Well, I go with what Leon Cersei said last week in one of the shows where he said, this is a 3-year deal, but it's not top money for an offensive tackle.
No.
It's probably backup money, and you can get out of it after 2 years. So
it's basically a 2-year, $26 million deal.
Yeah, and to me, that's
a deal.
That's a deal. That's a good deal. In my opinion, that's a good deal for both of them.
Yeah.
To the point of where Little hasn't shown necessarily that he's worth big time money, but it gives him a chance to develop another couple of years, and maybe he does. And I think that's part of the situation, and I think that's an organizational decision that, he's one of the guys. Like if you look at Brenton Strange, you look at Bigsby, Thomas, some of the younger guys, Jerry and Jones, you could probably throw in there, Monteric, you could probably throw in there. Yeah. If you look at those guys, Walker Little has probably basically done the same thing. He has talent. He's got a chance to get better. In that ball game, he played fine. In this ball game, I mean, they put no pressure on the quarterbacks in this ball game.
He played really well.
So I think it was a good decision from that standpoint. I think the conspiracy theorists are that he's a draft pick, and does that mean that Baalke's going to be back?
Yeah,
I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think it's an organizational situation. There aren't great offensive tackles running around out there.
Right.
And usually not in free agency for sure. So I think it was a good decision in my mind.
It's funny because I fight that with the conspiracy theory. Hey, I got another one of my guys to get a second contract. Yeah. And I totally get it. And I'm actually, a lot of me agrees with exactly what you're saying out there, because Trent wants to pat himself on the back. But it is a good deal.
Right.
He is a good player, maybe an ascending player.
Right.
And you still don't even know if Anton Harrison might be your eventual left tackle and Walker's your eventual right tackle. We don't know any of that right now.
We don't know that. Right.
But I'm hoping Shad Khan says, what have you done?
Yeah.
Do your job while you're here.
Right.
That includes maybe taking a look at some of these contracts. Yeah. And remember, the classic case was we don't negotiate during the regular season.
Right.
Well, they did.
They did. Yeah. I mean, there's, when you look at it, you could make a bunch of theories, but we don't know. But I will say that I think Leon the other day said he was an average player. I don't think he's an average player. I think he's a little better than average. Yeah. I don't think he's a great tackle, but I think he's a little bit better than average.
Yeah, and maybe staying in that spot for the long term might.
We've seen guys progress and get better.
Because Cam was above average and then kind of went in the wrong direction.
Right.
Let's hope this guy's above average.
Absolutely.
And as a ascending player. Coach, you always ascend on Campo and Joe. We appreciate it. We appreciate all y'all for listening. Don't forget, watching, listening, wherever you find us on social. We appreciate it. We will talk to you after the Jags. Let's just say go up to Nash, Vegas, and come away with the win.
Yeah, we got to get those Mayos. I don't like them, although I'm getting a little bit more with the Houston Texans after this last weekend.
Just remember.
But I still don't like the Mayo guys.
Yeah, they're all the hated Colts, the hated Texans.
That's right.
And the hated Texans.
We hate them all. It's Duval.
Yeah, exactly. We'll talk to you next week.